Can measuring brain signals identify criminals and clear the innocent? My next guest is Dr. Larry Farwell, the Harvard neuroscientist and researcher who invented brain fingerprinting, or forensic brainwave analysis. The technique, which measures electrical brain signals, can establish whether a person has knowledge of given information or not. The research on Dr. Farwell's brain fingerprinting has been tested in research at the FBI, the CIA, and the US Navy. And he says it's been used successfully to help bring a serial killer to justice and to exonerate a man falsely convicted and imprisoned for 23 years in the United States. Canterbury University is leading a project that's looking at the potential to use the technology as legally acceptable evidence. Earlier this year, we spoke with the Director of Clinical Legal Studies at Canterbury University, Professor Robin Palmer, who's leading the project. Well, Dr. Farwell is in Christchurch visiting the university and joins us from our studio there. Good morning.
Good morning.
Just remind us, if you would, how this technique works.
All right, brain fingerprinting is a scientific technique to detect concealed information stored in the brain. And for example, one of the first studies we did was with the FBI, where we would present information on a computer screen that only an FBI agent would know due to their unique training. The FBI agents, we would measure their brain waves, electrical brain activity, non-invasively from outside the head, and the FBI agent's brain would light up when they saw that information that they knew, and other people's wouldn't. So we could say, that guy's an FBI agent, that guy's not. Similarly, that guy is a trained terrorist, that guy is a bomb maker, knows all about making bombs. That guy was at a murder scene because he knows the details that weren't released to the public, or that guy wasn't at a murder scene because he doesn't know the specific details that the perpetrator would know. So it's been ruled admissible in court in a murder case in the U.S., in which, in that particular case, the individual turned out to be innocent. In another case, a serial killer was guilty, and we proved that he had the record of the murder stored in his brain.
So you're measuring for knowledge as opposed to lies or truth. That's a fundamental difference to other testing regimes.
Exactly correct. We don't measure whether they're anxious. We don't measure whether they're nervous. We don't measure whether they feel guilty. We don't measure whether they're truthful or not, whether they're a nice person or not. We simply measure, is that information stored in the brain or not? And we test information that would be known only to the perpetrator and investigators, so that if we do find that the person knows all of the details about the crime that no one's ever told him and never came out in the news media, that's probative evidence. If it turns out that they don't know all of the details about the crime, then that's probative evidence in the other direction.
You're using electronic sensors, so people know that they're being tested for this. Have there been any examples of people you know have had knowledge, you've done this test through research, but somehow they have been able to fool the sensors?
No one's been able to fool the sensors. In fact, I invented it, and I can't fool it. It's extremely accurate. We have gotten the correct answer in every case in the research at the FBI, at the U.S. Navy, at the CIA, and it's been published in the major scientific journals as well. In fact, I offered a $100,000 reward to anybody who could beat a brain fingerprinting test. Many people have tried. No one has ever succeeded.
Having had this accepted now into the courts in America, do you think it will become widespread? You've mentioned the cases where it has been used.
I think it will become widespread, and there will be two ways in which it will become widespread, I think. First of all, if someone is falsely accused of a crime, they will leap at the chance to say, well, hey, I didn't do it. I don't know anything about it. Give me a brain fingerprinting test and let me give my life back. And if someone has committed a crime or is even contemplating committing a crime, there will be a much higher probability of being able to catch the individual, because even if nobody else knows, the perpetrator has that record stored in his brain. I mean, he knows who he is, he knows what he's done, and now we can detect that. The same is true in counterterrorism. One of the big problems with terrorism is that we don't know who the terrorists are and have a hard time figuring it out. Well, they have specific information that would be known only to the members of a terrorist cell, or only to someone who'd been trained in terrorism, or only someone who'd participated in planning or perpetrating a terrorist act. And we can detect all of that information scientifically and very accurately.
Are we talking about really specific small details? I'm thinking in court cases where there'll be general knowledge perhaps of things, but there may be some specific details of the murder scene that only a murderer could know. Is it that precise?
It's exactly that precise. That's quite correct. We detect very specific information. We present that information on a screen, a computer screen, mixed in with other things. We can present words or pictures, and if they recognize it, the brain response will let us know that they recognize it, and that's been well established in the scientific literature.
You have got your skeptics, those challenging this technology. What are their arguments?
Well, nobody really can argue against the science. The science is very well established, and in the Harrington case where brain fingerprinting was ruled admissible, there was an expert witness on the other side. And even he said that the science was excellent. But what they'll try to argue is that, well, maybe it doesn't apply in this case, or maybe it's too soon to apply this in any case. There are a lot of discussion about the social policy and the legal questions, but the science is quite solid. I think everyone agrees on that.
The challenges I've seen tend to be over the near infallibility claims.
Well, I think that's a red herring. A report, you have to distinguish between two things here. I don't say brain fingerprinting is 100% accurate, because there's no such thing as 100% accurate in science. Now, in fact, we have gotten 100% right answers in the past, and that is simply an established fact that's been published in the scientific literature. You can't fault brain fingerprinting for being too accurate. Now, some people have overstated, none of the scientists involved, but other people have said, oh, hey, great, who needs judges and juries anymore? We'll know the right answer. Well, we don't say that. That would be overstating the case. But the idea that it is highly accurate, well, DNA is highly accurate too, and people don't say, well, DNA couldn't be good because it's so accurate. Brain fingerprinting is highly accurate. That's what we've found in the scientific research that's been published in the journals, and that's what we've found in the court cases.
Has anyone challenged the concept of the state being allowed to go inside people's heads? I mean, from the outside, it does feel a bit threatening.
Well, my perspective on that is the truth will set you free. In this country and in the U.S. where I'm from, there's a high correlation, not a perfect correlation, but a high correlation between truth and justice. And finding out the truth is generally a very good thing. Now, any technology can be abused. I mean, I would just as soon that some of the repressive governments in the world do not have access to brain fingerprinting, and I've refused to do business with them, because I would just as soon know that maybe the dissidents in some of the repressive countries are not found out. Overall, though, in the criminal justice system and in counterterrorism in this country and in the U.S. and in the other free countries in the world, knowing the truth is definitely a positive thing. It serves the cause of justice.
The way this works, which is monitoring recognition essentially, is there room for different interpretations when that information comes through? Are there shades of grey here in terms of how you can interpret what's being understood?
Well, good point. The test must be set up effectively. I mean, obviously, if someone were foolish enough to run a test on information that had already appeared in the news media, and you say, oh, okay, this guy knows all about the crime, well, that would be a useless test. I mean, the science would show, yes, he knows the information, but it would not be useful. So you do have to set up the test in such a way that you're using information that the person would only know if they were actually involved in the situation we're investigating, if they were present at the crime scene, for example. And, of course, you have to use salient information. So, yes, like any other science, it's got to be practiced judiciously and intelligently and according to the scientific standards. And we have published the scientific standards in the literature.
Thank you very much for your time. Dr. Larry Farwell is the Harvard neuroscientist and researcher who invented brain fingerprinting, also called forensic brainwave analysis.